Enthusiastically welcome our first speaker, Cari.
Hi guys. Wow. I'm Cari, alcoholic. Oh wait. Oh, there you are. Do I look smarter than a fifth grader now? Because I'm really not. Well, I didn't want to do this. This is the last thing I wanted to do this week. But one thing I learned years ago in Alcoholics Anonymous is not to turn down a request. I'd like to stand up here and tell you everything's been honky-dory since I got sober in 1995. And it was honky-dory for about 10 and a half years. So if you're new and you're young like I was at one time, just stay, because it's really hard, really, really hard to come back. I went out for 5 years, and then I came back, and it got worse. At that time, I never had any DUIs, never been to jail, and I kind of thought I never had any of those things happen to me. Well, now I have 4 totaled cars. No, 3. Only 3. Wait, yeah, 3. 4 DUIs. Maybe it's 4 cars. I can't even remember anymore. It's not good. I got to go to jail in my 50s, and that was interesting for a girl like me. I know I can stand up here and I look like I have it all together, and I don't. I relapsed recently, so I'm under 30 days. And I just wanted to say that up here because it's about rigorous honesty. And we don't do that very well. At least I don't do that very well when I'm drinking. I'm a liar, a cheat, and a thief. And so I'm trying to figure out the disconnect, and I think I've kind of figured it out. It's all God's grace, I believe. But somewhere deep inside me, because now my relapses are getting closer together and they're getting worse. My last one, I burned a car to the ground, and if 2 hunters wouldn't have come out of the woods and dragged me out of my car, I would be dead. And my dog luckily jumped out the window. That's the second traumatic car crash I put my poor dog through. No wonder he's on Prozac and doggy tranquilizers now. But he still will get in my car. Don't ask me. I don't know why. But I somewhere inside have a reservation and think that it's still the answer. I have a really good friend to lots of us, passing away. And boy, did I want to drink today. But some of my friends that are helping me will kick my ass, and I know that. And it's not going to solve anything. It never does. It makes everything worse. And pretty soon I'm not ever going to be able to drive again, so I need to pay attention to my life. I don't want to die drunk. I don't want a legacy left to my grandkids or my kids of that, because that was my legacy from my grandfather. And he died of this disease, and it was horrible. So I'm trying to just focus on 24 hours. And I know God's not finished with me because I should be dead a couple times over. I triple flipped a car. I burned a car to the ground. I'm like the bad penny that keeps showing up. So I need to respect that. I need to respect myself. I love Alcoholics Anonymous, the best years of my life, and some of the hardest things I ever walked through in my 10 and a half years of sobriety, I did it with grace, and I didn't have to drink. I have an older son out there running and gunning it, and back in the day, he was already getting arrested, getting felonies at 13 years old. And I walked through all that with grace, and my family and Alcoholics Anonymous helped me a lot because I was a single mom. So I would say if you're new, please stay. Don't do what I did, because it gets harder and it gets worse. And if I don't get it, if I don't figure out how to have a deep enough surrender where I think it's not an option, I'm going to die. And you guys are going to be having a memorial service for me. And quite frankly, that's not the way I want to go out. It's very serious. You know, I wasn't a drug person. I tried them, so maybe I could drink longer, but that didn't ever work. I still went into a blackout. And God saved me from myself many times, many, many times. I don't want to cry because I'm not crying about any of that. My heart's hurting a little bit for a good member of our group who finally got this thing, and he gets to die sober. And that's the most thing I'm grateful for today, is that he's dying sober and he's not going to be in pain anymore. And he's not going to have to worry about if he's going to relapse. You know, he got some solid time. But we beat the shit out of ourselves, physically, emotionally, with all the stuff we put in, all the situations we put ourselves in. I'm telling you, I couldn't even tell you. There's not enough time to tell you how many dangerous situations I've been in besides crashing my car. I have a thing. I like to get in my car, drink, and drive. That's where I like to drink. And don't ask me when that happened, but it happened. And I want to live today, and I want to get this thing. I really do. Don't fuck around. Sorry, excuse my language, but that's the only word that fits right now for me. It's a deadly disease, and it will take you out. You know, we're the only ones that have a disease that tells us we don't have a disease. I can handle one more. Yeah, I could handle one more. I was in a blackout and 3 shots driving out to Williamson Valley and crashing and burning my car to the ground. It never gets better. It gets incredibly worse. And that's pretty much all I have. Thank you.
Thanks, Cari. Let's welcome our next speaker, Spencer.
Hi guys, my name's Spencer. I'm an alcoholic. I just want to say, Cari, thank you so much for that vulnerability of just coming up here and like telling us where you're at, especially because I'm a retread too, and it gets infinitely harder every time I come back into these rooms to get sober again. You know, and my pattern too is I'm not somebody that ever went in and out. I didn't do like the 30-day shuffle. That wasn't my story. I would do the get sober for 3 years, go back out for a couple weeks, come in for another few years, go back out for a couple more weeks, and then come back in again. And so I'm not saying like one is worse than the other, but that's just, you know, who I am. And that's my story, and that's, you know, kind of like my path in this journey. My path through these rooms has been, you know, one of coming and staying and then really experiencing what sobriety has to offer. Like I never needed to be sold after that first time of coming into AA and actually like doing this work that's up on the signs behind me. Like I never needed to be sold that AA worked. I knew it worked. I experienced peace in my life. I experienced true tranquility, the restoration of all of my relationships. We were all completely fucked when I came in. Like all that stuff came together. I went from telling my dad in 2017 that I was going to cut his throat open if he ever hurt my mom again, to me and him are best friends now. I've actually got a better relationship with my dad than I do with my mother. And that was not the story for my entire life growing up. I've thought a lot about like, you know, what would I share? Because I don't have enough time to even like begin to like go through the totality of my story and how I got here. I have the disease of alcoholism, and I qualify as an alcoholic who really loves whiskey to the point where I will drink 2 to 3 fifths of whiskey in one sitting. And I'll wake up, drink, pass back out, drink, and just keep going and going and going. Like I could put down an absorbent amount of alcohol, and I will do that until I get to the point where I am dead, where I am puking up blood. I will drink rubbing alcohol. I will drink vanilla extract, Listerine, hand sanitizer. I don't give a fuck. I'll drink it all. Like it doesn't matter. I love drugs. I'm a big fan of goofballs. Used to do 1 shot of heroin in this arm, another shot of meth in that arm. Like I love to get down How I like to play is mostly with weed and whiskey though. But I like say all that because I just want you to know like that is like kind of like how hardcore of a junkie and like a street rat that I am. Like I don't look it, I get well really quick. And that can be a good thing. It could also be a really bad thing because for me, my ego regenerates really fast. I get the cars back, I get the jobs back, I make good money, I've got good friends, good relationships. The relationship with the girl, like it's all good. And so I don't think I need anybody's help anymore. I'm a quick study. I learn things really easy. And so it's like for me, like I'm my own worst enemy in that regard. And so that's basically what's kind of like happened to me in my evolution is how I've gone through the steps in this program is really like each time getting a little bit more out of my own way because when I went through the steps the first time, it was the biggest fucking joke you've ever seen in your entire life. I didn't want to get a sponsor, but finally enough people were bugging me. You know, like, hey, do you have a sponsor yet? Oh, you should probably get a sponsor. And I was like, just shut the fuck up. So I went and I got a sponsor and, you know, called him like, you know, every month. And we got to the 4-step and, you know, he's like, hey, you got to write this stuff down. I was like, all right, cool, I'll do that. So I wrote it down. So my 4-step was double spaced, 1.5 pages. Like, and there was like, you know, it wasn't even good enough to use as like toilet paper if I ran out someday. It was such a piece of trash. Like, and then after that, like we sat down, like I read my 1.5 pages to him and he was like, cool, that's great. Like, okay, like, are you ready to have your defects removed? And I was like, yeah. And he was like, cool, that's 6 and 7 done great. So, and then I never called him after that. Like that was the thoroughness of which I worked a program. And it like, you know, for me, like it worked for a little bit. Like life got good. I was comfortable. I was happy. You know, the obsession was removed. I had done enough work to get that done. And I just cruised until, like, before I knew it, I'm drinking again. And I don't know why. You know, and it didn't, when I've tried everything, like marijuana maintenance is fan-fucking-tastic until I'm drinking again. It doesn't work for a guy like me. I really relate that what it says in the doctor's opinion, that I can't use alcohol in any form whatsoever. Because it doesn't matter what I put in my body. Eventually I'm going to go back to drink again. Eventually I'm going to go buy another bottle of whiskey. Kind of like how I grew up, like I had loving parents. I had a firefighter for a dad and a school teacher for a mom. Like what's more American, you know, cute, like nuclear family than that? And you know, there was no abuse. There was nothing like, you know, malicious and outlandish like that. But you know, I had a warped perception from the beginning. I don't know whether alcoholism is genetic or not. I think there's some good evidence for it, but it's on both sides of my families. One grandfather died of alcoholism. The other one got sober. He's got over 40 years now. But it's all up and down on both sides of my family. Aunts and uncles are dead, or they're sober. And there are some that should be sober that aren't, but that's not my call to make. They're on their own journey. But for as long as I can remember, like I've always felt different. Like, and I really hold when people say that alcoholism is a disease of isolation. It's a disease of loneliness, because I felt that way my whole life. And I don't know whether this really happened, like this, whether this was the reality of the situation, but it was my reality and it's the way that I ingested this. But one of my earliest memories as a kid is wanting to play with my dad. He would work 96 hours on and then have 24 hours off, and he didn't have time to play with me. And I really wanted to play with him. I never got to see him, but he was fixing the car. And so in order to go spend time with my dad, I drug a tire iron down and fitted it on the lug nuts of this car. I was 3 years old. I didn't even know how to tie my shoes. Like, and I know this happened because I have a photo of it that my mom took. She, you know, like, oh, isn't that cute? Look at him, he's fixing the car. But how that translated was that I learned this lesson that in order to be loved, I had to do stuff. I had to earn love. There wasn't anything about me that was lovable, that had any kind of value, that had any kind of intrinsic worth or goodness. I had to prove to you whether or not I was worthy of that in order to receive it from you. And so that set a trajectory. Like I said, I don't know whether that's what happened or not, but that's how like my mind took that event and then processed it moving forward. And so for the rest of like my life through, you know, all of my childhood and then into my teenage years, it was about me trying to prove why I was somebody that you would want to be around and why I was somebody that you would want to get to know. Because I didn't know that I had anything like worthy of myself, of being loved or having people like want to be around me. So, you know, I was a really lonely kid. And, you know, I tried everything. It was, you know, I'm not particularly like I'm not like some huge athlete or anything like that, nor am I like the super smartest guy in the room. So I had to try and be the craziest. So like while everyone was playing football and, you know, was doing baseball and like the mainstream stuff, like I got into motocross and I became like the crazy motocross guy. It was all a mask. Like everything that I've done, I've had all these various stages. I had a motocross mask that I've worn. I've had an MMA mask that I've worn. I've had a surfing mask that I've worn. And like it was all these different personas geared to get you to like me. And I found that when I drank, I didn't feel that need to do that anymore. I was intrinsically okay with who I was. It didn't matter. And that was the first time that I took a sip of alcohol when I was 13. Like, I felt that way. And when I started drinking, it was not a gradual thing. It was immediately all into blackouts. The first time I ever went out drinking, I blacked out. And I blacked out every single time after that. I don't know how other people do it. That's just my story. I've always drank for the blackout. I've always wanted to see, when you go into surgery and stuff and they give you anesthesiology, like they're trying to get you just above death, but not quite at death. Like, that was always my goal whenever I got loaded and drank. How close can I get to dying without actually dying? And that was the way that I lived for a long time. I got introduced to Alcoholics Anonymous in 2011 after a DUI. I did not want to get sober, did not think that I had a problem. But I went to just get the courts off my back, basically. And, even though I figured out pretty quick that you could just sign your own court card and, never go to the meeting, but I actually, went there. I thought it was, listening to the people talk was actually, somewhat interesting. So I went to my 30 meetings. And I learned about the program there, but I didn't really think that I needed it. Fast forward, I was in my MMA mass phase, so I spent 40 hours in the gym, and I thought that was what was going to keep me sober, because it did. I was too fucking tired to go party. Until I got hurt and I had to get a surgery, and that put me on the bench. And it only took, I got home from the surgery, this is in 2015, and I had a prescription for Norco, and it took me an hour to take that whole prescription and half a bottle of whiskey by the time I got home. I should be dead, but it's all it took was just oh, well, I can't do what I know is going to actually make me feel better, which is work out. So I'm going to go do this instead, without even thinking about it, and I was off again. I remember being in my apartment bedroom, and my grandfather came over, and he's just knocking on the door, and I'm laying on the floor. I'm dead to the world. I've been on some kind of prodigious bender, and he just knocks in, he stands above me, and he goes, "Hey, bud, you ready yet? You want to go to a meeting?" And I'm fucking hungover. I'm staring at my grandfather's big old Santa Claus figures, gray beard, and he's just "Hey, let's go to a meeting." And so I went with him. Because I was I can't do this anymore. And I started to get sober. I started to actually do some things, and I got plugged in, and I fell in with a really good group of young people and stuff that were in AA. And they really actually did the deal, and I think that was something that was really important for me, is I had to get around other people that were actually doing the deal. When I got around other people that were doing things, it made me want to actually do that. And when I saw people grow as a human being, I wanted to grow as a human being, and it helped a lot. But for me, the God thing was always a huge issue, and not in the way that I think a lot of people get up here and talk about it. I didn't have any problem believing in God. The problem was that I thought I knew everything about God. I grew up religious, and I was that nerdy kid that was "Hey, could we go to the extra church service? Because I want to study more." I was that idiot. And so I bought extra books, and I learned about this stuff. So we got to step 2 and 3, and I was "Don't worry, I got this shit in the bag. We're good. Me and God are golden." But what I didn't understand about when the book talks about that you can have a higher power of your own understanding, or God as you understand him, and I don't really care what anybody believes. I think you're a little off if you think the doorknob's God, but whatever floats your boat. But for me, what it's transformed into now is that it's a personal relationship for me. It doesn't need to be anyone else's understanding, but it's an understanding that I have with that God. And it became personal for me. And that was the thing that I found that was always missing. It wasn't, the quality of did I do all the steps? Did I go to the meetings and stuff? Did I because I do believe that meeting makers make it, but you've got to be doing some other things too. Just you can't also just go do one thing and then not go to meetings. You're missing the other point of it. But for me, that personal aspect was everything. It changed everything about the steps for me. Step 4 did not scare me so much as that I found it, I just, having that personal relationship with a higher power for me allowed me to be vulnerable with myself. It wasn't necessarily about the fear of can I write this down and share it with another human being? It was am I willing to acknowledge that is part of my story and what happened? I found that when I did my 4th and 5th step, what ended up happening, it wasn't so much as a relief feeling people talk about, but it became kind of okay, it was more of a catalyst to go into 6 and 7, because I didn't know necessarily who I wanted to be, but I really had an idea of who I didn't want to be, because I just wrote about it. I just written it down. My 4th step was 48 pages long. I'm not saying that's the right way to do it. I'm just saying I didn't want to leave everything out, because I know what it's like to work from a page and a half of bullshit. inventory. So I wrote an extra thorough one. And that for me has been kind of like where I have hung out in the last like 9 months, is really like I know who I don't want to be. And so when I see opportunities to like jump on that guy and do something different, I do that. I have a good group of people around me that I listen to, that I get to run my thinking by. I've got a sponsor in this program. I didn't ask him to be my sponsor. He told me he was going to sponsor me, but I really needed a sponsor at the times, and it's worked out great. My sponsor my first sponsor when I moved to Prescott had relapsed, and I hadn't had a sponsor for a couple weeks, and he's like, who are you working with right now? I was like, well, he just went out. I was like, great, I'm your sponsor. So thanks, Mike, for taking the initiative on that. And but I find that when I take myself out of it and I really approach the steps and I approach life from a position of like, how can I grow from this? Like, how can I become a more loving human being for this? Like, I find that things fall into place. Like, I don't have to like really try. Like, I knew that AA worked for a long time. What I never understood was the love of AA. I didn't understand that until probably about like a month and a half ago, when I had been trying to like move out of the sober living that I was in for 4 months. Very hard to find a place in Prescott, if you're not aware of that. And I had been praying on it, like, God, could you help me find the right place to go? Like, I could really use some help with that. And I found myself homeless. Actually, it was on a Thursday. I was on my way to go to this meeting, and I was like, found out that I was like, I couldn't stay at the sober living any longer, and that I needed to move out. And I was like, God, it'd be a really great time for you to answer that prayer right about now, because I don't know what I'm going to do. So I threw up that quick prayer, and I was just like, all right, I'm not going to worry about this until after the meeting. And so I came to this meeting, and at the end of it, like, I had friends in this room, people that love me and care about me, that could tell that something was just a little bit off with me. And before I left this meeting, not only did I have a new sponsor, I really felt the love of AA, but I had a place to live. Like, people around here will love you that much. Going from somebody who grew up really thinking that you had to earn something to get loved, to having it just freely given without nothing being asked in return, when you're not even necessarily asking for it. Like, I wasn't asking for anything, but like, I came in and what I experienced was like really true love, and I experienced like the power of God working through other sober people that just want to see you fucking succeed, and that just want to see something better for yourself. And that's what I got to learn in this program. And I never experienced it. And in all the years that I had been in and out of AA, like I had been a spectator here, I had been a participant here, but I had never been on the receiving. I shouldn't say I've never been on the receiving end. I have never allowed myself to be on the receiving end of free love like that. And, because I have a hard time receiving. I want to be the one giving. I love giving presents. I hate receiving them. I like being the one building people up, but I hate being built up because I don't want to need that. And, for me, the biggest thing, what I think a psychic change, at least personally, means for me. I don't know what it means for anybody else. I think it gets to be different for everyone else's experience. But for me, what it means is that I don't need to maybe look at it that way. There's another way to look at it. Like, maybe it's okay if I'm not 100% all together, because you're not 100% all together, the world's not 100% all together, and all together, that's okay. Like, that's not my original idea. That's philosophy from the book of Spirituality of Imperfection, which is a really amazing book. If you guys haven't read it, you should check it out. And that's what I've been given. The greatest gift that I've been given is that, I meet people today on the street, and they don't know that I used to, shoot drugs into my arms. They don't know that I used to, run from the cops and lead a pursuit through the harbor in Seal Beach, which, is an interesting side story for another time. But no one can see that. They just see another person that shows up to work, that's a worker amongst workers, that's doing his best to just help another human being out, along the way. And that's the greatest gift ever. Because I used to walk around and I used to have all the shame that every one of you could see, all of the shit that I had done, and that the way that I felt about myself was how you really saw me. And people can't see that today. And that's not anything that I consciously did. I didn't come into this room and start these steps and start actively trying to figure out how to get you guys to like me more. I just tried to figure out how to not be the guy that I knew I didn't want it to be. And I don't know whether you want to call it a miracle of God or, subconscious psychology or whatever, rewiring of neurons, but people cannot tell who I used to be. And it's not anything that I consciously did, and I attribute that to God. I had a good friend at my men's stag home group in Hermosa Beach, and he used to sum up the steps in he used to sum up the steps like this. He says, the steps are really just saying to tell the truth and love people. So like, that's what they're all really, saying to do. And I really, really agree with that. And it really resonates with me because it's easy for me to make this way more complicated than it is and make it way easier than it actually is. I flipped that. Like the steps in AA and sobriety for me don't need to be made more complicated because they're not. They're simple. But it doesn't need to be made easier because it's not. It's hard. And I wish I could say that hey, my name's Spencer, I'm an alcoholic, and I woke up this morning and I hit my knees and I said the third step prayer and, I read some, daily reflections. The reality is that I woke up this morning late, I slept through my alarm, and, I got to work 45 minutes late, and I've been behind the 8 ball ever since. That's what happened today. And, the miracle of it, and the reason why I'm sharing it is because I didn't beat myself up over it. And that's the kind of shit that I would crucify myself for, back in the day. I'm the kind of perfectionist that, whenever I would get sober and I knew, the jig was up, it was time to, stop and go back to AA, it was, for whatever reason, that was always in October. My last 3 sobriety dates have been in October, and I have always tried to land them on my birthday, because my belly button birthday was in October. And so I'm the kind of perfectionist that's just sick enough to want to land a sobriety birthday, that thinks he can control that, and land it on his actual birthday, so then he only has to celebrate once because I hate celebrating twice. This is the first time that I didn't actually try and do it, and guess what? I fucking did it. So how about that? So with that, I'm going to shut up and end. Again, I just want to reiterate that part. Tell the truth and love other people. That's what the step is really asking me to do. That's how I try and live my life. And I hope that shows and it blesses other people that I meet along the way. And so thank you very much, Mike, for letting me come up and talk.
Thanks, Spencer. Let's welcome our last speaker, Tobin.
I'm Tobin. I'm an alcoholic. And I don't know, I was talking to my sponsor before I came, and he said, just pray for God to talk through you. So that's what I did all the way here. And then I got out of the truck and my shoe fell apart, so I had to run back home. I haven't dressed up in so long. It's been 15 years or something like that. So the dress shoes I had just fell apart. I'm like, what the hell? So I don't know if that's a bad sign or what, but thank you for asking me to speak, Mike. And I don't know, it's too short a time to go through the whole war zone and all that, but I think about 9 I started drinking, and my dad had a cabinet, and he didn't really drink, and I just took every bottle out of there and put it in a big glass and just drank that. So at 9 years old, I remember just throwing up, and and that's pretty much how I did everything ever since then. And my first sobriety day was 2000, October of 2000. I got about a year, went back out, and that was kind of, I could get a year and then, I'd go back out. And then in 2002, 6/30 of 2002, I got sober, and I was, all about it. I did everything that was asked. I attended a meeting every day, and I swore I was never going to drink or drug again. And I opened my own business, got custody back of my daughter. Built a really good life. And then life got busy, and I didn't have time for the meetings anymore. And as soon as I stopped going to meetings, it was like, look what I have done. I took credit for everything. And I was able to stay dry for a while, but life was crazy. I was an asshole, and, it just didn't work. And in 2017, my dad, he died from ALS, and that's when I started drinking again, and the whole time that I was sober, I always said, well, I'm just a drug addict, I'm not an alcoholic. So I sat there and I would always say, I could just, drink one and put it down. Well, I had to make sure and go test that out, and I still in my head think, I controlled it well, but I was driving home drunk, one eye trying to hit the middle line, and once I started drinking, it didn't take long before I was doing my drug of choice, which is methamphetamines, and I now know that I am truly an alcoholic. I mean, no doubt about it. So, this time around, I have 11 months tomorrow. So, no fronts. I knew my sponsor was going to say that. No fronts. But, I'm also supposed to say that. I have a sponsor, and my sponsor has a sponsor. So, I mean, if you have a sponsor that doesn't have a sponsor, get somebody new, because they're not doing it right. But the first time into the program, I really wanted it because I was a garbage can junkie. I was homeless. Sticking a needle in my arm, living behind a dumpster. And my stepfather died, and I was invited up to Prescott, where my stepdad and my mom live. And I drove up here in a stolen truck with my first wife and 2 kids. And I weighed 170 pounds, which I'm normally about 225, 230, so I was, really sucked up. And my stepdad's brother came out and said, your mom's willing to pay for treatment. For what? I'm not, I don't do anything. And and about a year later, I called my mom and said, I want to go into treatment, and it's funny, I started calling around to the treatment centers, and none of them were calling me back. All of a sudden, my phone, they start calling back, and I'm like, oh, no. I had to go out on a real, big run that one. And the first, I think, 9 days in treatment, I slept the whole time. So, and when I got out of treatment, I tried to stay in Phoenix and stay together with my first wife, and it was just miserable. We got together, I was high, and when I was sober, I couldn't stand her. She couldn't stand me. And so I couldn't stay in Phoenix and stay sober, because everywhere I moved, somebody I knew was using, that I used with, or did whatever. And so I did the geographical. I moved up here, and I hadn't started really working a program because I had relapsed. I forgot to say that. I relapsed. I picked up my 6-month chip. I mean, just high, really high, and I'm up speaking, and I couldn't remember what I was talking about, and it was a real shit show. So, but okay, where was I at? But anyways, I moved up here, and I was not working a program or anything, and I was putting a lot of mileage on my truck, going back down to Phoenix, getting drugs, coming back up here, and I finally just, broke down and look, Mom, I need to go back into treatment, and I went back into treatment, and I really started trying to apply everything in. I dove through the steps, did all of that, got a sponsor up here, and then went into a halfway house. I don't know if any of you remember Jim Nugent or not, but I was in the family house, and Jim Nugent, just to put it nicely, was an asshole. He was a hard ass, and Rarely Group back then was at Washington School, and it was like 600 people. I mean, it was just huge. It was the biggest meeting I've ever been to. And he'd make us dress up like this, and Mike Bennett, I actually hated Mike back then. I mean, it was just like, he's like up there, and he was just arrogant, and all the qualities that I have inside of me were like I was looking at, and now I just love Mike. He's, a real good friend of mine, and I always listen when he's talking, Let's see. But so I moved back up here and I started doing the program. But of course, it was like I'd always go and get a girlfriend and, screw it all up. Went to a concert with a girlfriend and ended up drinking there. That was my first year, Chip, there. And then and then I had a girlfriend that was in a halfway house. I actually had my picture on the refrigerator in the halfway house saying, "Stay away from him," And not that it's so funny now, but, But, that really helped out, actually, because all the girls wanted to date me then because the picture was up there, so. But then I was dating a girl that was in that halfway house, and she OD'd in the bathroom at that halfway house and died. And that was, really brutal, trying to not blame myself. But then at her funeral, the woman that ran that halfway house stood up there and said, "It's your fault. That's why you don't date in early sobriety," and pointed out and said my name. And I'm just like, oh, Jesus, But I really already felt that way inside. But it didn't stop me anyways. I dated another girl from that same halfway house like a month later. So, and then I ended up with the manager of that halfway house. So I don't know what happened with that. So, but anyways, I was, I had a really good life, and I worked the steps, I got sponsees, and I helped out, I did whatever I could. I went to meetings, and until life got busy, and then I stopped going to meetings. And so when I went back out drinking, I was like, I was telling myself it was under control because I'd only have like 4 or 5 beers, at night. And but my brain, it would just all day long I would think about, I can't wait till 3 o'clock so I can get home and have 4 or 5 beers. And pretty soon, I was in the mindset of, well, I'm already, getting drunk, so I might as well do some meth too. And I swear this time it did not work like it used to, That old saying of a head full of AA and a belly full of booze is so true, I would just sit there and get, depressed and miserable. And I ended up with my 2-year-old grandson banging on the door, and I'm smoking a bowl of meth. And I had, moonshine too, pounding that down. And I don't know, when he started banging on the door, I'm looking at myself, and I was just like grabbing my gun out of the dresser, and I put it in my mouth, and I'm like, I don't know why, I'm even here anymore. And I don't know, my girlfriend the other day read something about I really didn't want to die. I just wanted the life I was living to die. So, I mean, because I don't have the guts to pull the trigger, because I've done that I don't know how many times, and I never was able to accomplish that. So, it took a while, and then I ended up with my second wife. I ended up on her couch in Baghdad, Arizona, getting sober from pain pills, meth, and alcohol. And I would have rather been in prison. It's not fun because she's not a pleasant woman, and it was just yelled at quite a bit, and every bone ached, and I was throwing up all the time, and she's wanting me to go to the grocery store and get groceries. I'm like, no, it's not happening, and I didn't know anybody, and there was no meetings that I knew of in Baghdad, and we were fighting, and I just said, no, I'm out of here. I came back to Prescott after about a month and a half of the dry on her couch, and with my head hung low, I went into a meeting just filled with guilt and shame, and I don't know if anybody's been to a CMA meeting, but that's what I went to, a CMA meeting. And those are my people. And I think I went to 2 meetings, and then, John asked me to go to lunch and go up to Ash Fork with him. And I don't know why I was so nervous to ask him to sponsor me, but I just couldn't spit it out, and finally I did, and I don't know, he's been awesome as a sponsor, a friend, there's been, a lot of stuff, hard shit that I've been through. I don't know if I can share it, but a month and a half ago, June 11th, my 30-year-old, he was 31 in 2 weeks. Son was killed in a rollover accident in Phoenix. And at Friday morning at like 12:30 in the morning, his mom called and, said, you need to get down here right away. Your son, has been in an accident. And I jumped in the car, got my girlfriend, we jumped in the car because I don't go to Phoenix by myself whatsoever. I try to keep myself out of situations where I could be tempted completely. Okay. But so anyways, my second call was to my sponsor, and at 12:30 at night, he jumped in his car, drove down there to meet me, and I've really been having a hard time with higher power and all that, and I had been talking to another guy in the program that said, I'm like, I just don't believe, and he says, who the fuck are you? You don't need to believe, you just need to do it. Get there and pray. So I had just been doing that like the week before, and then I go into the hospital room and there's my son, dead, and his mom says, he's in a better place now, and it just like hit me with like a ton of bricks, how can I not believe that I want him to be in a better place now, and I've been really trying to, make a conscious contact with God. And I don't know, the people in this program are just awesome though. When I went down for his memorial service, 2 guys in my Sunday morning men's stag meeting came down, my sponsor did, and which was great because the first thing we did when they walked in the door, they were trying to give us, alcohol, and I'm like, yeah. So, but the people in this program are just amazing, and I don't know, there's a lot of other stuff I could share, but I'm being told to get off the mic now, so. My suggestion to everybody is to get a sponsor, and not one that's going to co-sign your bullshit, Get a sponsor, hang around with the winners in the program, always get into the middle of the pack, Nobody gets killed in the middle of the pack, They pick out the outside, so. That's all I got. Thanks. Thanks, Mike.